Hi everyone, it's Darren Jacklin here. I'm just about to go on stage in just a few brief moments to do a seminar called 10x Your Life. I'm going to show you how to 10x your life in terms of areas of your life that matter most to you and which you're reliably dealing with in your life. So think about for a moment right now, what's something you'd like to really achieve in your life, both personally or professionally? How would you go about doing that? You see, there's certain success formulas that when you apply them and you produce them, you can do extraordinary things in the quality of your life. I'm going to jump on stage now, so let's get ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The key thing is why I'm asking you why you're here, because everything you want and need comes through other people. Everything you want and need comes through other people. When you heard Michelle introduce me in my bio, he said I connect with people in 128 countries. Did you know the majority of those countries I connected with was before social media? Airplanes, airport lounges, conferences, concerts, everywhere I can get a chance. You see, the thing is, when you see immigrants in this city, you see people from different countries, different cultures, you want to start to connect with these different men and women. Because we're in a global online village today, right? You want to be thinking about in your business in terms of 10x your business, how many countries can you get into? Right? I knew in myself that, okay, I've done 45 countries now in corporate training. There's 196 countries on 7 continents. So there's still a lot of room for expansion and growth and development. Does that make sense? Now, why do you want to get bigger in terms of what you're doing? If you're I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, I was on a private island. I met a gentleman who created a dog food business who ended up white labeling it. I think it was to Walmart. He white labeled this company. He told his wife, give me 10 years. I'll exit from the company. I'll sell it off to another company. We'll then become financially secure, and I'll take you for a year and travel the world. Well, it took 13 years. I had breakfast with the guy. The guy had sold the company for over $400 million US within 13 years, from starting from his garage, building a pet food business, selling dog food. In a competitive market space where the market space on the commercial shelves of bricks and mortar retail business is pretty tough, right? Competitive. But he found unique ways through social media and going to dog parks and talking to pet owners, and that's what he would do, is he would go to dog parks and give samples away all the time to different dog parks. Because that's where the people are with the dogs. The reason everybody talk, everybody go to a dog park. People like to talk to people at dog parks, don't they? So he found a niche market of going there where people were. And so the thing is always remember, be mindful tonight as you're here, is you want to start looking whether you want to raise access to capital. Okay, how many of this room think you're going to raise capital sometime? Money for your business. Okay, so the key thing is tonight, your mindset wants to be is, I've got to start building the network of people before I need them. I knew when I went to school, I was not the smartest kid in class. But I knew I could always hire the smart kids. And I knew going through school that I need to learn how to build a network. You know why the most parents send their kids to private school? You know the number one answer? Because of networking. Not because of education. It's because of networking. Right? See, successful people go out and build networks of people. Because it's not what you know, it's who you know, it's who they don't know is you. And so the thing is, I'm always expanding my network. I'm in New York City next week. I'm meeting with a famous movie star, who I mentioned name, you'd know who she is. I meet with her. And I meet with another person who's the top CEO of corporate America who's just retired that we're now bringing on to work with us on a project. Right? Now, why am I doing that? Because I'm always leveling up, always skilling up. Does that make sense? Always expanding. So you want to put yourself into environments where if you walk into an environment, like I've been in environments where I walk in, I feel like I'm the dumbest person in the group. I've never felt that way. You walk in, it's like, oh my gosh, you're at a real estate investment conference, or you go someplace, social media or internet marketing, like, this is so confusing. I know nothing about this. Does that make sense? So you're always putting yourself out there, expanding yourself to get bigger and bigger and bigger you want. Does that make sense? Now the key thing is in your life, you want to also start hanging out with people that play a bigger game than you. So you want to think about in your network, if you're in business today, how many millionaires do you have, or multi-millionaires do you have, or even billionaires in your Rolodex? I have 13 billionaires in my Rolodex that I know on a first name basis. Now you say, well, what big deal? Why? Because no matter what you're doing in business, you want to know people who are centers of influence or people that are best in class to always be expanding you. Does that make sense? You might have a social online media marketing campaign that you need somebody to give you an endorsement or a testimonial or somebody to do a review or a case study for you, that you need that. You need that leverage point, right? Because the key thing today to understand in business today is you've got to get attention. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of distraction out there. So you've got to get attention. For the last 20 years, I got a lot of attention in corporate America. I'm well known. I'm known by, in the government, I'm known for being thrown out of offices. I'm known for being put on do not call disturb lists. And I'm knowing to go in and train people so they got promotions, trips, bonuses, cars. You know, some of the people I started with were, you know, started in the mailroom. Today they're running companies. Does that make sense? So the thing is that, but now my transition after 20 years of training over 1 million people. Last year I crossed 1 million people in live events around the world in corporate seminars in 45 countries. Now it's to reach the masses, the general population of society. Does that make sense? So it's a total different marketplace, because when I'm dealing with CEOs and executives, they have a different agenda in a room. I spent the whole day today with CEOs and executives. I was in a board of directors meeting this morning with an international company, and the rest of the day was all with, you know, things. So it's a different mindset. So one of the things in terms of communication, as Troy mentioned, is you want to learn how to deal with people in different personality styles. Does that make sense? How many of you read the book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki? His second book that came out was called Cash Flow what? Cash flow quadrants. Remember the employee, self-employed, business owner, investor, right? So you want to learn, how do I relate to the different personality styles in business? Now, why is that important? Well, if you listen to what Mark shared, when Mark first got up, Mark is very detail-oriented. In fact, if you don't mind, Mark, would you say you're a perfectionist? Yeah. Right? Now, why do I know that? I've never met Mark until tonight. But when Mark stood up, the language he spoke out of his mouth told me a lot more about him, because I was present in my listening to his communication to me. Does that make sense? And so when you're around people, you want to learn how to identify people at a very quick rate when you meet people. Also, too, when you come into a networking event, one thing you want to establish is who are the influencers and who are the decision makers. You see, a lot of times when you're out networking, prospecting, writing proposals, doing grants, going to networking functions, people run around and, oh my gosh, I made this great contact tonight. But they're an influencer. Right? They're an influencer. And they're excited and they like your product, they like your service, they like your business opportunity, but they're not the one that makes the decision. So as part of your fact finding of your discovery, you want to find out with him or her, how do they know the decision maker? What's the relationship with the decision maker? How do they have access to the decision maker? Does that make sense? Because as you're gaining access to decision makers to go in and do business deals, you want to know that this person can go in and recommend you. Maybe even go in the meeting for you. Do an introduction by email or text messaging or a 3-way telephone call. So you always want to think of what's your leverage points to go into doing things. Now, one of the key things in terms of 10x in your life is you want to look at who are the most successful people in Vancouver. See, years ago, and I didn't bring it tonight, years ago, I would sit and I'd think to myself, okay, who are the most successful people in Kelowna, British Columbia? And so I got a chance to go meet those people. And who are the most successful people in Vernon, British Columbia? Because I started off in the Okanagan Valley. And so I started to expand outwards, thinking, okay, who are the most successful people in different industries? So if you look at your business, for example, you don't mind the dog food business or pet food business? Or what is it?
It's ratings and reviews. It's pet services marketing.
Well, gotcha. Okay, cool.
It's all pet maps.
Okay. So you think about in your career, your business, who could give you a great endorsement that would help you reach and expand even further? Who's a celebrity? You know, like you take for example, Ellen DeGeneres. Maybe she's passionate about animals. And maybe Ellen would give you a shout or something like that on Twitter or social media. And what would that do for your reach of expansion?
You say that because when I was a kid, I was on her TV show.
Oh, you were?
I was, just for one episode.
But
it's a bit of a foot in the door, just, many years later. What's that?
The foot in the door to be used.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of these you can consider looking at is you could find a way to spin that. Now, the millennials in this room, how many in this room are in social media marketing? Is that way that he could use that? There's a way he could probably use that towards marketing some of that, right?
Tweeting her the video of the episode.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've done for years is when I meet famous people, I ask for permission to take a photograph with them. I then peg their name in social media, and a couple of weeks later, it comes up in Google rankings, and all of a sudden I rank up with them on photos. If you Google my name, you'll see what different celebrities, and I come up in a couple of weeks, and when you type in their name, I pop up in the photos that are images with their name, and it links to my website. Didn't cost me anything. And yet the companies pay millions of dollars to get endorsements and photo opportunities and go to expensive dinner parties, and I just went and asked for permission to get a photo with them and then just tagged them. Another thing I was talking to the CEO today, and we're going to a conference in Switzerland later this year. And he's like, Darren, there's a couple people I want to meet. How do you think we should get access to you? I said, well, it's very simple. I will phone the hotel conference center, and I will speak to the general manager of the conference center, and I'll just say, listen, we're coming from Canada. We have a meeting. We're coming to this big conference. These people are guest speaking at the conference. We need to collaborate with them. and we need to be put on the same floor, side by side with their rooms, their hotel rooms. Because here's the key thing, you can write this down, proximity is power. That's one thing I've learned in my life and my career is proximity. Having proximity to people that are decision makers, that are centers of influence, or best in class. So you want to be always thinking, how do I get access to certain key people that are decision makers, that if they like my product, my service, my business, or business opportunity, and they like it, what could potentially get developed out of that relationship over a period of time? Does that make sense? And so you're always expanding. How can I be that go-giver? How can I be in service and provide value and contribution? Now, one of the key things is for a lot of people, is one of the things that I work on, and I'm very fanatical about it, for some of you in this room that know me, in regards to running my life by a calendar, and also living by what we call a DMO, which is your daily method of operation. And I run my life by that. Like it's something very important to me. It's fundamental for me. Is your daily method of operation. You see, when you wake up tomorrow morning and during the waking hours of your day, what are the highest priority activities that you're going to do or delegate that are going to move you forward towards your target or towards the goal or towards the finish line of whatever you want to achieve? So you're going to be thinking about your mindset tomorrow when you wake up. So for example, you know, yourself, Troy, Mark, a few of you other ones that are entrepreneurs or self-employed, your mindset is thinking revenue-generating activities, income-producing opportunities. Okay, so you think about, how can I go have income-producing or revenue-generating meetings that are going to project positive cash flow into my life? And why do I say positive cash flow? Because you might start going to meetings where it costs you money to pay for parking and a lunch or a dinner, or you have to buy a membership, or you have to go golfing, or go to a professional sport like a hockey game, where it's costing you money out of pocket, which is business development. Yeah, you get a tax receipt, but it's money going out. And you're not seeing the financial return on investment. Does that make sense? And so you want to start to look at things of how you can go out there and do business development, but also meet different people. Now, a lot of people use social media online, which works great, and I'm learning more about that. But I'm also still traditional, where I pick up the phone and call people. One of the key things, I called 2 people today on their birthdays. Today, I call people. Also, how many did you ever see the show called Sesame Street? Remember the television show called Sesame Street? Who was the gentleman that was well known on Sesame Street with Oscar the Grouch?
Bob McGrath.
What's his name?
Bob McGrath.
Bob McGrath. How many remember Bob McGrath? Those you old enough. Bob McGrath taught me how to count to 10. So last year I was volunteering at the Variety Club here in Vancouver for BC Children's Hospital. And Bob McGrath was backstage. And I had that moment of opportunity. Do I approach Bob or not? And so I approached Bob and I connected with him and I said, I said, Bob, we've never met before, but I want to thank you. You're responsible for teaching me how to count to 10. And he laughed and we started that conversation. And I walked up and said, would you be open to having some fun? And he was sure. I said, so I pulled up my new iPhone, because I went from a BlackBerry to an iPhone. It was brand new, just a couple weeks of it. And I did a video. You can go onto YouTube under my name, Darren Jacklin, and you'll see Bob McGrath from Sesame Street and myself, and we sing Happy Birthday. Now, why? Now, we just say happy birthday because now I can repurpose that video for every person I ever meet that's a baby boomer of that generation that would know Bob McGrath from Sesame Street. And guess what? All of a sudden, what does it do for me? It builds me and edifies me of dealing with somebody who they remember as a childhood experience. Does that make sense? So always looking for points where you can connect with certain people to be a center of influence to connect you with that. Now, I talk to Bob every now and then. He's in his 80s now. He's a wonderful man. He's in the state of New York. In fact, he's on my list to contact to maybe meet up with next week. Well, I'm there. So some other things to look at is events where you can connect with, and I know some of you were talking earlier in regards to meeting millionaires and multimillionaires. Now, where do millionaires and multimillionaires hang out? Vancouver Club, Tri-City Club, private box suites at professional sporting events. There's an event happening this weekend on Saturday here in Vancouver. Anybody know what that event is? It has to do with horses.
Over by the Coliseum,
Yeah. What's going on this weekend on Saturday?
yeah.
All right, so everybody dresses up.
Yeah.
Derby.
Yeah. What's it called?
Dayton Cup?
The Dayton Cup, it's called. Here in Vancouver. So there's a place for centers of influence, influential people, yacht clubs, things like this. Now, why would it be important to get around these kind of places?
Big players.
Bigger players. Right? You see, the thing is, here's the thing you got to consider in your business. And some of you in this room are just starting off. You can choose around, like Troy, for example. Mark, Troy, you're just getting started. You can go after the small fish and deal with small people with a small budget, or you can take the risk and deal with bigger people. Now, you're younger, you're a millennial generation, you don't have the track record or the biography, or you don't have the work experience, but if you go out there and hustle enough, like I did, eventually somebody will believe enough in you, they'll say, yeah, we'll give him a shot, we'll give him a chance. And you just have to have that one person on all those doors you knock on, even though last. So the thing is, it's the conversation of saying, how do I overcome the mindset of not taking rejection personally? And one of the reasons why IBG was against my life is I probably failed the more of all of you combined in this room. Okay? I've made tens of thousands of phone calls. Tens of thousands of phone calls. I used to have a standard where I made 400 cold calls a day. A day. And I can do it.
What was your initial experience that got you through whatever that you had, your fear of rejection, your resistance to it? What was the breakthrough?
I was living on welfare. And I was living in an apple orchard in Vernon, British Columbia under Davidson Orchard. I was homeless. When I was in my early 20s, I co-signed a loan for 2 guys for a business. And I didn't know what due diligence was. I got excited because they told me I could make income with an work called mailbox money. I thought, cool, I'll get a check every month for money just comes in. So I took $20,000 cash out of the bank that I had, and I had, a 900 plus credit score, and I went ahead and I co-signed multiple loans for 2 guys for a business. I didn't read any of the fine print of the documents from the bank. And has anybody in the finance industry ever heard of a GSA? Called the General what? Security Agreement? If you don't know what that is, you need to learn what that is. Now, go home and Google it, study this, because if you're ever going to be involved in financial contracts, financial institutions, you need to know what this means. It cost me tens of thousands of dollars as a mistake to not know what it was. Okay? It cost me about $50,000 to learn what a GSA is. Okay? A GSA is called a General Security Agreement. Also, you need to learn what they call the demand loan. That cost me several $1,000s and 8 years of lawsuits to learn what that meant in my 20s. Okay? So the thing is, a demand loan is where the bank or financial lending institution calls a demand on the loan right away because there's a risk and liability going to happen with the loan or the person, and they call it. Does that make sense? So when they called the loan back in the 1990s, guess what? We didn't have the technology like we do today with cell phones, mobile phones. We had landline phones and residential addresses. So all the collection letters and the phone calls were going to the other 2 guys' address, not to me. So the bailiff tracked me down after 120 days after their 4 months in arrears and came and repossessed my car and froze my bank accounts, and I actually ended up going homeless. Now, it was embarrassing for me. It created a huge challenge to my family, but I'm very grateful because you know what it taught me? Mental toughness. When I went homeless and I had to walk into Vernon, British Columbia and go in that day to apply for welfare, which I'll remember, in fact, Roxanne Round, who was a lady who was the social worker who filled out the paperwork for me at the welfare office. When I travel sometimes and I go to Vernon, BC, I've had her, she's showed up at some of my events before. As an example, to say, yes, he came in, he was a client of ours. And without going into too much detail, she's got breach confidentiality, but I give her permission to do that. See, the thing is, these are the things that the challenge that you had. When I was homeless, living on the streets, I got hungry. And that's the key thing is if you look at an immigrant when he or she comes to North America, they are hungry. And that's the thing is if you feel a burning desire of a hunger inside you that you want it more than anything else, right? And I live with that all the time, okay? I'm so excited going to New York next week to meet the people I'm going to be meeting with because it's a chance for me to expand and grow and level up to a whole new level. It's going to take my life to a whole new level. Plus also what's happening with one of the companies on the board of directors with right now, massive things and a major global announcement next week that's going to happen in the media, it's going to happen. And so I've got to keep training and develop myself to level up to now play at that level because guess what? Now there's more exposure. Now there's more, guess what, people watching. Now there's more critics. Now there's more skeptics. Now there's more haters. And now there's more raving fans and more supporters. And understand this, as you play a bigger game, you're going to get hugged and you're going to get slugged. You're going to always get hugged and going to get slugged. I was dealing with a CEO today on that. He's like, I don't like conflict and confrontation. I don't want to get slugged. I don't want to get hugged. I said, if you want to become a CEO and build a big corporation, you've got to get used to it. It's part of the game. Same thing if you want to play sports. You're going to have people criticize your documentary, whether you like it or not. And people are going to rave about it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's just part of the game. So the thing is, no matter what you're doing, you're going to get hugged, you're going to get slugged, you're going to get kissed, you're going to get kicked. And the more you go out there and grab attention, the more people. Some of the greatest critics in your life will be your immediate family. Right? So your immediate family. Okay? My father has been a great critic in my life all my life. My father still thinks I'm going to go get a job. Still thinks it. So I just keep sending the stock prices, the money I got invested in some different projects, and I just have him, I put his email address on the thing so it sends him daily reminders of what's going on. Right? Right? So the thing is that, you know, and in his own little world, he can do it. And I love and appreciate my father very much. But sometimes people in your life that are your greatest critics can also be your greatest motivators. Right? So realize in your life that when you're playing a game where you're not sure how you're going to do it, but you're scared to do it. You might. I used to be scared to phone people. I used to throw up. That was a big thing. I used to make cold calls. I used to throw up. Seriously, I'd throw up. And I used to get really scared. And I would start to sweat, and I used to start to shake. So I thought, I got to break through this. So what did I do? I went and got a job for minimum wage as a telemarketer for McLean's Magazine. I thought, if I'm going to learn how to deal with rejection, I might as well get paid for it. Rather than pay for it to go to college, university, pay for it, come up with debt, I thought I might as well get paid for it, come up with a paycheck every 2 weeks. Does that make sense? So the thing is, in your life right now, some of you might have to take a part-time job for what you're doing. Think, how can I go get a part-time job while I'm there, get mentored and coached, trained and developed, and still get paid for it? Right? So if some of you are scared to go out and get rejected, then maybe get a job on Craigslist or on the internet called a brand ambassador, where you're on the street, part of the street team, and you're doing brand ambassador. I've done that before. Where you go and you're doing product. You're doing these things where you're learning to put yourself in the general public to face getting rejected, so you get thick skin and you become very, you know, mentally tough on things, so it doesn't bother you anymore.
Rejection is the key to success.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing, is you will learn when you start to do that. See, most of us get scared, right? And the thing is how do I take that fear and use it as fuel to what you want to do? I was on a conference call today. I had no idea what the heck they were talking about. I had no idea. I had no clue. For 7 minutes, I was on this call. I thought, I don't know. But I'm writing things down, and I'm going to Google, and I'm watching videos, which I'll watch tomorrow over the weekend, in terms of what they were saying so I can train and develop myself. Does that make sense? Because the next time I get on the call next week to have a call again, I'm going to know what they were talking about. And I know other people on the call had no idea what they were talking about. They were pretending, looking good, that they knew what they were talking about. But they didn't know. Right? Because they were acting, behaving the same way I was, but I was quiet. But in the background, I was saying, okay, you know what? They're talking about something I don't know. It's in business. I need to level up and learn, and skill up and learn. I'm going to write it down. I'm going to find a way to get resourceful and train and develop myself on what it is. And I'm going to seek who's in my Rolodex as mentors and coaches and trainers who are living that. When I first started looking at advisory boards, and by the way, I encourage some of you in this room to get on advisory boards, boards of directors, okay? Where you get financial compensation plus stock options. Now, here's the key thing. When I first started looking at advisory boards, I had no idea. I was terrified. I have a mentor, friend of mine of 25 years in Kelowna, British Columbia. Okay, we were business partners back in the 1990s on a project, did very well. And he says, you need to be on boards of directors and advisory boards. Then we'll raise your profile, you'll get stock options, you can do well, you'll network like you've never imagined, and you'll get held accountable to a level you can never imagine, especially in a public company. Okay? And so he made some introductions for me. Now, you might think, well, how the heck, how am I going to contribute? You see, I would have never thought my life would be where I was today. In fact, to be honest with you, I never thought I'd ever live to be past 20 years of age. Right? Because I did over 200 suicide attempts to end my life in my late teens. Right? I never did drugs or alcohol. But I used to practice. How many in this room visualize? I used to visualize suicide. I used to close my eyes and visualize myself driving at 140 kilometers an hour into a telephone pole, and I used to visualize upon impact how I would eject out of the vehicle and then kill myself. And I used to get so excited about that to end my life because I was in so much pain. And I visualized that for over 6 months. And that's what I did. And I've been at the rock bottom of life because I know what it's like to be in a state of suicide, because I've been to a point in my life where I've been in so much pain that I think that if I just died, then I would actually do society a good favor. You know, people say, oh my gosh, the impact of family, what they think of you. I thought if I just leave, I'll actually be better off. They'll be better off. They'll be glad I'm gone. I went to a funeral many years ago to a guy who, his mission was to screw as many people as he could in business before he died. I did not know that because I met him towards the end of his life, and I don't advise you to do that. And when I went to his funeral in Lumbee, British Columbia, so it's out of British Columbia, I went to the funeral. There was people that came to the funeral. I said, "Why are you here?" They want to make sure he was in the ground. You don't want to be remembered like that, right? I said, "Why are you here?" I want to make sure he's in the ground. Right? You want to be remembered for somebody who made a contribution, made a difference in the world. Does that make sense? So, go ahead.
Do you think it was easier for you to commit more of a social suicide than after all this stuff?
Absolutely, because I had low self-esteem, was very insecure. I felt very socially awkward, right? Very aloof. I didn't feel like I fit into society. You see me now very confident today. You see me like I can interact with people. You didn't see me back then. Of somebody who had no belief in myself. I had constant negative self-talk, huge anxiety issues, right? Terrified to go to bed at night, terrified to wake up. I used to wake up in the morning and my alarm clock would go off and my question was, what time am I going to go to bed tonight? And I wasn't even out of bed. And that's what I would say to myself. I would walk around just saying, oh my gosh, when you go to sleep, I'm just so tired throughout the day. Does that make sense? And so the thing is to look at in our lives, in your life, you've got to realize that you're going to have to make some major decisions. And when it comes to expanding your business 10x, the biggest thing is you working on you. I can give you lots of strategies, but guess what? Until you work on you and you apply those strategies, you're not going to get the long-term results. Does that make sense?